Marxism. Marxism is a socio-economic and political theory developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the mid-19th century. It critiques the effects of capitalism, advocates for a classless society, and provides a framework for understanding social and economic development. The primary works outlining Marxist theory include The Communist Manifesto, 1848, and Das Kapital, 1867-1894. Core concepts of Marxism. Historical materialism. Materialist conception of history. Marxism posits that material conditions, particularly the means of production and economic activities, are the primary influence on society's structure and development. This contrasts with the idealist conception, which places ideas and human consciousness at the forefront. Dialectical process. Social change occurs through the dialectical process, involving the conflict of opposites. History progresses through a series of stages defined by the dominant modes of production and class relations. Class struggle. Classes. Marxism identifies two primary classes in capitalist societies: the bourgeoisie, owners of the means of production, and the proletariat, workers who sell their labor. Conflict. The bourgeoisie seeks to maximize profit, while the proletariat strives for better wages and conditions, leading to inherent conflict. Revolution. Marx predicted that this conflict would culminate in a proletarian revolution, overthrowing the capitalist system and establishing a classless, communist society. Surplus value and exploitation. Labor theory of value. Value is derived from labor. The amount of socially necessary labor time to produce a commodity determines its value. Surplus value. The difference between the value produced by labor and the wages paid to laborers. This surplus is appropriated by capitalists as profit, leading to exploitation. Alienation. Alienation of labor. Workers in capitalist societies are alienated from the products of their labor, the labor process, their own humanity, and their fellow workers. This alienation arises because workers have no control over the means of production and the fruits of their labor. Capital accumulation and crises. Capital accumulation. Capitalism is characterized by the accumulation of capital, driven by the pursuit of profit. This accumulation leads to the concentration of wealth and the centralization of capital. Crises. Capitalism is prone to periodic crises due to overproduction, underconsumption, and other contradictions within the system. These crises exacerbate social inequalities and create conditions for revolutionary change. Stages of historical development. Marx outlined several stages in the development of human societies. Primitive communism. Early human societies characterized by communal ownership and egalitarian social structures. Slave society. Emergence of class society with a ruling class owning slaves. Feudalism. A system where the nobility holds land from the crown in exchange for military service, and peasants are dependent on the landowners. Capitalism. A system based on private ownership of the means of production and the exploitation of wage labor. Socialism. The transitional stage where the proletariat, having overthrown the bourgeoisie, begins to dismantle capitalist structures and establish collective ownership. Communism. A classless, stateless society where the means of production are communally owned, and goods are distributed based on need. Marxist critique of capitalism. Economic inequality. Capitalism inherently produces and perpetuates economic inequality, as wealth accumulates with the bourgeoisie. Exploitation. Workers are exploited as they are paid less than the value they produce, with surplus value appropriated by capitalists. Alienation. Capitalism alienates workers from their labor, products, and fellow humans. Imperialism. Capitalist nations exploit less developed countries for resources and labor, leading to global inequalities. Environmental degradation. The pursuit of profit leads to the unsustainable exploitation of natural resources. Marxist vision of socialism and communism. Socialism. Proletarian dictatorship. Temporary state where the working class holds political power and suppresses counter-revolutionary forces. Economic planning. Production and distribution are planned and regulated to meet the needs of society, rather than for profit. Abolition of private property. Means of production are collectively owned and managed. Communism. Classless society. All class distinctions are eliminated, leading to true equality. Stateless society. The state, as a tool of class oppression, withers away. Abundance and freedom. Resources are abundant, and individuals are free to develop their potential without the constraints of class oppression. Influence and legacy. Marxism has profoundly influenced political thought and action worldwide. It inspired numerous revolutionary movements and the establishment of socialist states, most notably in Russia, Soviet Union, China, Cuba, and Vietnam. Despite the collapse of many Marxist regimes in the late 20th century, Marxist ideas continue to shape discussions on capitalism, class struggle, and social justice. Marxism remains a critical lens through which to analyze and understand socio-economic structures and dynamics, advocating for a radical transformation towards a more equitable and just society. Marxism's effects on society. Revolutionary movements. Russia. The 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, led by Lenin, established the Soviet Union, the first state founded on Marxist principles. The revolution dismantled the Tsarist autocracy and aimed to build a socialist society. China. Mao Zedong's leadership brought Marxism to China, culminating in the 1949 revolution and the establishment of the People's Republic of China. Mao adapted Marxism to fit Chinese conditions, focusing on peasant-based revolution. Cuba. Fidel Castro's revolution in 1959 overthrew the Batista regime, leading to the establishment of a socialist state aligned with Soviet Marxism. Vietnam. The Marxist-inspired Viet Minh, led by Ho Chi Minh, fought against French colonial rule and later against the United States, resulting in the unification of Vietnam under a socialist government in 1975. Social and economic reforms. Land redistribution. Marxist governments implemented land reforms to redistribute land from landlords to peasants. For instance, land reforms in the Soviet Union and China aimed to dismantle feudal systems and empower the rural poor. Industrialization. Socialist states embarked on ambitious industrialization programs to develop their economies. The Soviet Union's 5-year plans and China's Great Leap Forward were significant, although often controversial, efforts to rapidly industrialize. Education and healthcare. Marxist regimes prioritized expanding education and healthcare, aiming to provide universal access. Cuba, for example, achieved high literacy rates and developed a robust healthcare system. Political structures and governance. One-party states. Marxist-Leninist states typically adopted one-party systems where the Communist Party held centralized control. This was intended to ensure the implementation of socialist policies but often led to authoritarian governance. Collectivization. In agriculture, collectivization aimed to create large, state-managed farms to increase efficiency and production. The Soviet Union and China pursued collectivization, though it sometimes led to significant disruptions and famines. Planned economies. Central planning replaced market mechanisms in many socialist states. While this allowed for rapid mobilization of resources, it often resulted in inefficiencies and shortages. Social and cultural impacts. Equality and classlessness. Marxist ideologies promoted social equality and aimed to eliminate class distinctions. While successes varied, Marxist movements significantly challenged traditional hierarchies and promoted social mobility. Women's rights. Marxist states often advanced women's rights, advocating for gender equality in work, education, and political participation. The Soviet Union, for instance, promoted women's employment and access to education. Cultural revolution. In some contexts, Marxism led to cultural upheaval. Mao's Cultural Revolution aimed to eradicate traditional cultural elements deemed reactionary, leading to widespread persecution and destruction of cultural heritage. Global influence and anti-imperialism. Decolonization. Marxist ideas influenced anti-colonial movements, providing ideological support for struggles against imperialism. Leaders like Nelson Mandela in South Africa and Patrice Lumumba in the Congo were influenced by Marxist thought. Non-aligned movement. Marxist principles influenced the non-aligned movement, where countries sought an alternative to alignment with either the US or the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Third Worldism. Marxist ideologies inspired Third Worldism, emphasizing solidarity among developing nations in their fight against economic exploitation and political domination by former colonial powers. Critiques and challenges of Marxism. Authoritarianism. Many Marxist states became highly authoritarian, suppressing political dissent and limiting freedoms, which contradicted Marxist ideals of emancipation and democracy. Economic inefficiencies. Central planning often led to economic inefficiencies, shortages, and poor productivity, undermining the economic goals of Marxist regimes. Human rights abuses. Forced collectivization, political purges, and repressive measures led to significant human rights abuses in various Marxist states, notably in the Soviet Union under Stalin and in China under Mao. Adaptation and reform. Some Marxist states, such as China, have adapted their policies to incorporate market mechanisms while maintaining political control, leading to significant economic growth. Conclusion. Marxism has profoundly shaped global politics, economics, and social structures. While it has led to significant social reforms and inspired movements for equality and anti-imperialism, its implementation has often been marked by authoritarianism and economic challenges. The legacy of Marxism is complex, reflecting both its transformative potential and the difficulties of realizing its ideals in practice.